Welcome to The Point of View. This is your favorite current affairs show on television. Here on The Point of View, we pick the right topics, get the right guests, ask them relevant questions on issues that matter to you. We're live tonight and we're trying to understand what's happening in Ghana's parliament. The 2022 budget has been rejected and approved in equal measure. Tonight we'll give you the full story with two key members of parliament who've been part of the debate as the 2022 budget goes through the process of approval. Send us your comments and views. I'll tell you who we have when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back. So tonight we have three key days to look at. On Friday, November 26, the minority in Parliament rejected the 2022 budget. They had 137 members. Speaker Babin was in the seat, and that budget was rejected. Then on Tuesday, November 30, the majority threw out the purported rejection and approved the budget. They also had 138 members, except that the MP for Bekwai was the speaker at the time. Today in Parliament, the minority leader moved a motion. Let me show you what motion he moved and what argument he made. He was essentially asking for the purported, now using his words, approval to be declared null and void. Here's Haruna Idrisu.
I was referring to the votes and proceedings of Friday, 26 November 2021, when I said that the votes reported, and accurately and rightly so, the votes and proceedings of Friday, 26 November 2021, reported that the Honorable Sarah Ajua Safo was absent with permission. And therefore, I'm saying that if 137 took a decision which was declared a nullity, and the same 137 yesterday took a decision, it's only appropriate. We do not recognize that the presiding officer of the speaker has an original or a casting vote, and therefore you could not be more than 137. I so submit. So I beg to move that the motion that was adopted be rescinded and the Minister of Finance be authorized to lay before this House any concessions he is keeping in his head. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So that was Haruna Idrisu. That motion was seconded by one of my guests tonight, Mahama Ayariga, so I won't repeat what he put out. There was also a fierce resistance from the majority side. Chairman Sabonsu spoke, as did other members of the majority. I'll give you the response of the MP for Damongo in the person of Abu Jinapo. He essentially says the minority's motion was wrong and that it should be completely rejected.
The import of what the learned right honorable Speaker Do Ajawo is making is exactly the point I'm making. That Article 102 and 104 are distinguishable. And so our friends from the other side, their reliance on Article 102 does not help their case, does not resolve the matter. If you want to find out whether or not the person presiding can be part of the quorum to take a decision, go to Article 104. Go to Article 104. It is black and white. It is established. And Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, there are replete of authorities from the Supreme Court to affirm this decision of distinction. And Mr. Speaker, there are so many of them that I can't give all of them to you. But permit me to cite one of the locus classicus when it comes to the canon or the tool of interpretation of distinguishing between one part of a document and another part of a document, where if a matter is expressly mentioned in one part of the document but not mentioned in the other, it means that it is excluded. Mr. Speaker, I refer to Kojo Adra versus National Democratic Congress, writ number JI/13/2014, Supreme Court dated 15 July 2015. So, Mr. Speaker, let me conclude by urging upon you that what took place yesterday in this House was constitutional, was lawful, was legal, was appropriate, was in accord with the practice and conventions of this House, and indeed as members of the choir, you are entitled to be counted for purposes of a quorum to take a decision. And we didn't need Mr. Speaker voting to take a decision. We needed half of the members present to take a decision. And that decision is valid and must stand.
So that was one of the majority members, lawyer Abujinapo. So the Speaker, Joe Osei Ewusu, also known as Joe Wise, then decided to rule on the matter, and all hell broke loose. So here's an excerpt of how the sitting ended.
He's debating. You are debating.
Who was that?
Shut up! You should shut up, brother.
Who was that? Can the messenger find that person and work him out?
Mani, we are ruling. Mani, we are ruling. Hey, Mani, we are ruling. Hey, Farouk, please. Everybody sit down. Let me start ruling. Sit down. Let me finish. Speaker, rule quickly.
Honorable members, let me put on record that I am a member of Parliament. I was counted to make the motion, and
that was
I
seconded in this house.
But
what are you doing? You can't rule on it. We have to take a decision.
I did not vote while
in the standard orders what is
therefore the application,
he cannot
the
rule.
request, the
He cannot
application
rule on a motion that is before the house. No. How can he rule on a motion that is before the house? He cannot rule on the motion before the house. How can he rule? So as the standard orders.
Honorable members, sitting is suspended for 1 hour.
You are not a speaker. You say you are not a speaker. 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 You don't get cooperation from us. You are not a speaker. You are not a speaker. Get on. Away. You are not a speaker. Yeah, take it away. He's not a speaker.
So that was what happened. You saw somebody running. I think they went to pick the speaker's chair. There was absolute confusion. So in studio, I have the Information Minister and MP for Fasting Ayariga, Kojo Oppong. Good evening. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bernard.
And then I have former Information Minister and MP for Boku Central, Mahama Ayariga. Good evening.
Good evening.
So the thing ended in uproar, and it seemed as if it was your side that was so upset. Somebody even went to take the speaker's chair. Why were you so angry at what the speaker was doing?
Honorable Haruna, the minority leader, started trying to move a motion. And initially, the speaker tried to disallow that. And then I intervened, and I argued that he couldn't disallow it because the grounds on which he was using to disallow Honorable Haruna, he didn't rely on those same grounds yesterday to disallow the majority leader, Chairman Sabonsu. So he realized it, and I think he backtracked on that. Now, he didn't make it clear that he just wanted to hear arguments, whether or not he should allow the motion or not allow the motion. The impression was created that he was now allowing me to second the motion moved by Haruna. So we proceeded on the assumption that I was seconding the motion, and then he now invited 3 people on either side to argue for and against the motion. And we did argue for and against the motion. So if you go to our standard orders, once a motion is moved, it's not for him to rule. What he could rule on was whether to allow the motion to be moved. Once he allowed the motion to be moved and allow it to be seconded,
it's out of his hands.
Then it is out of his hands. So that is why Muntaka, got up and said, no, you can't rule because you've allowed the motion to be moved, you've allowed it to be seconded, and everybody saw the motion being seconded, and you went ahead and listened to arguments for and against the motion. So how are you at this stage going to just give a ruling? I think that basically is the irregularity, and it's so fundamental. In all fairness, it's so fundamental. I don't think that he can just give a ruling and that will end it. He has to put the question. He could have deferred putting the question, even if he thought that the majority group didn't have the numbers to carry the day. He could defer the vote.
Is that your suspicion?
Oh yeah, we were counting everybody, so we knew that they didn't have the numbers, and the only way he could save that group was to either
but I thought you people said
forcefully rule or adjourn the house.
I see.
Those are the two ways out. There was no other way out.
But the behavior of your members at the end, was that acceptable? Somebody went to carry the chair. Somebody was running across. I mean, when the mace is moving, I'm told that means that the power of parliament is moving. We should all be upstanding. People were literally out of control.
You see, it's a serious matter, even though I laughed about it. But we need to take the rules seriously. If at the highest level you appear to want to undermine the rules, then it becomes difficult for you to instill discipline among the newer MPs and the backbenchers and the middle benchers or whatever you call them when they start getting rowdy. So fidelity to the rules. The rule is that if a motion is moved and seconded and debated, you put it to a vote. Now if you, the speaker, clearly, in order to avoid an embarrassment, you seem to be undermining the rules, it becomes difficult for you to instill discipline on other people in the chamber. Because you are responsible for maintaining order.
All right.
And to have the moral authority to maintain order, you must act according to the rules yourself.
Okay. Kojo, I'm coming to you first from a parliamentary perspective before we do government. Were you taken by surprise what happened today that Haruna put a motion in to overturn what happened yesterday? Because it appeared the speaker was taken by surprise because he was saying that he was sitting there for 1 hour 30 minutes. Somebody told him what was going to happen. Was your side taken by surprise? And by consequence, was it that you didn't have the numbers, for which reason you weren't prepared for this to go to a debate?
No, I think the speaker said that because the Honorable Haruna Idrisu attempted to invoke Order 51. And the same Order 51 is what the Honorable Osei Chairman Sabonso attempted to invoke yesterday. And in both cases, Mr. Speaker did not admit that motion.
Okay.
Indeed, if you listen to my good friend, the Honorable Mahama Ayariga, I wrote down his words. He says he didn't make it clear that he was not allowing the motion. That's true. He didn't make it clear. And then he says that they proceeded on the assumption that he had admitted the motion. Our understanding is that the same way he handled it yesterday is the same way he handled it today. Because, you see, when you come to motions, there are different types of motions: procedural motions, substantive motions, motions on notice, motions that are not on notice. When you come under Order 51, Order 51, if I just may quickly read, Order 51, which Osei Chairman Sabonso tried to invoke and which Haruna tried to invoke today, says, at the time appointed for the purpose under Order 53, Order 53 sets out the order of business. Any member may, with the prior approval of Mr. Speaker, move a motion.
Okay.
What it means is that you should have, and there's actually a whole outline of how you should seek that prior approval. The address that must come with it, etc. So what Mr. Speaker was saying was that he had not been served any prior approval. So moving a motion properly called under Order 51 cannot happen.
Okay.
And then I think I heard him quite clearly. He said, despite that, I'll go ahead to hear you. Let me hear you a bit more. And so you realize that the Honorable Mahama Ayariga then had an opportunity to elucidate on it. And he played an interesting game. He started off by thanking Mr. Speaker for admitting the motion. And
so it was his fault?
Well, no, I'm not saying it was his fault. It was an interesting game that he played. So we were all on our side saying that, but Mr. Speaker has not admitted the motion. Anyway, Mr. Speaker proceeded to listen to various views. And then when he finished, he made a ruling on the attempt to move that motion.
Okay.
In fact, if you go back to the order paper, the votes and proceedings of yesterday, you will notice that yesterday's activity was not by motion. Indeed, that is dealt with before you come to the motion that was still standing on the order paper addendum, the motion on the budget.
Okay.
So you notice that in the votes and proceedings of yesterday, which were adopted today, the rendition says that Chairman came by order 51, but he only drew attention of the Speaker to an unconstitutionality that has taken place, and Mr. Speaker ruled on it. So what happened there and what happened today are literally the same, despite the fact that both sides tried to invoke order 51.
Both were shut down.
Mr. Speaker did not take a vote on either of those motions. He proceeded to make a determination on the issues that they were attempting to litigate before him. But I think the big picture is this. Our colleagues in the minority have some substantive issues that they want to raise. It's only a matter of the methods they are using that our side has not been in consonance with. And I believe that we can find common methods that can achieve the same objectives for the Republic.
Yesterday we were told that the leadership had met and agreed to certain concessions, but the minority wanted a new document presented, and the government was saying no, we will probably make it like an appendix, some sort of, we will approve the budget and then make those changes later. Is this what happened? You are part of leadership, aren't you?
Oh, well.
Is that what happened? That you agreed, but then that's the reason you decided not to take part in Parliament yesterday, but that the leadership had agreed on specific changes in the budget. Is that correct?
I will not say that is correct. What I would say is that there was some effort to engage.
Okay.
And both sides put forward their issues. I think essentially the minority, even before yesterday, had stated its grounds. Basically, how you treat ICA and then AGM petroleum deal in the budget policy statement. How you treat the tidal wave disaster and your non-provision for dealing with the problems of those communities. I think we also spoke about benchmark values. Is that okay? And the major issue really is e-levy.
Okay.
And our position that you should scrap e-levy because...
Scrap or suspend?
Scrap it.
Scrap it. Not reduce. Not reduce.
No. I mean, that was the starting gambit, which is basically that we don't want e-levy. That was what we stated before the meeting.
Did they agree to any of these during the meeting?
I wasn't part of the meeting, and they came back to us and reported some discussions about government offering to reduce the e-levy to
the
1.75% from 1.75 to 1.5%. The wider caucus did not agree. The wider caucus did not agree, even though there was some indication that there was some discussion about even if they could come down to 1%. But the wider caucus was like, well, we are even against the principle. It's not really about the quantum. The principle that we're against. And so, I mean, that became an issue. But then I think that when you go to negotiations, you will have to definitely, move. So I think that there was some movement. And, we said, okay, you've moved, so let's see if even that movement will be accepted. But then the government side wasn't even willing to accept that movement. So negotiations broke down. And the negotiations were in two phases. There was a negotiation about whether or not the budget had been thrown out, and therefore, even if we agreed on some new policy positions, whether or not you are bringing a new document that captures those policy positions, or you will just come and then state that you've made some concessions.
Okay, so those are the two issues.
So those are the two issues. And I think that on both issues, there was no agreement.
So let me get
At the end of the day, there was no agreement on both issues.
So from majority side, you didn't agree that what happened on Friday was valid. But what about government's post-chat 2 proposals to the 5 things you mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at what the finance minister yesterday in winding up on the original budget debate said on the floor, it's quite clear that government is minded to accommodate, to listen and to deal with whatever concerns are being raised from all aspects of our Ghanaian society. And again, I stress that it is the methods that we have to focus attention on agreeing, because in substance, the issues that they want to deal with. So, for example, Keta, that they want to see some significant budgetary allocation to the Ministry of Works and Housing to get on phase 2. It's something that I can tell you without any equivocation, government is minded to do and to do as quickly as possible. But government has said that, you see, the budget goes through 5 stages. Policy approval, then you come to estimates for the ministries, you put it all together as appropriations. Then the 4th one is that if you have revenue measures, you come with the specific revenue bills. And then you have budget implementation. That's where you will have things like supplementary or mid-year reviews coming in. So, no harm, no foul. The issues you have raised, for example, on Keta, when you get to estimates, those adjustments can be made and then brought to appropriations. We don't need to throw away policy if we can do this at estimates and appropriations.
Okay.
If you talk about Ejapa, which was one of the 5 issues that they listed, in essence, what the text essentially says is that government still intends to monetize mineral royalties and will come back to this house to have a conversation about it. Simpliciter. That is what, in essence, the rendition in the policy documents is. But when you go into the fiscal tables, it's zero. No monetary values have been put there. So yes, it is a legitimate issue that you have raised, but it is something that is clearly understandable. So if you keep insisting that let's throw away the policy document because Ejapa is mentioned in it, we are not doing ourselves much of a service. If you take, let's say, ACA. In fact, for ACA, the argument is that the rendition in the policy document is what they disagree with. But, you know, Bernard, to all intents and purposes, that policy document is of very little binding effect on anything. It is not a contract. It is not a transaction. It doesn't put money anywhere. It is not a reason for which the policy document should be adjusted. So our position has been that you have some issues. I mean, and if you take the e-levy, he is very right. We have, and again on the floor of Parliament, the Minister responsible for Finance articulated that we are minded to do something about the e-levy, even in 2 ways. The second being engaging the telcos to take a haircut. Because if the telcos take about 2% of $100 billion, 2% of $100 billion as charges, and mostly repatriate that back to their home countries. And the world is in an economic challenge because of COVID. The government of Ghana requires some funding and is having a conversation with them to take a haircut, which we believe will be successful. We can successfully do that, and we will achieve what you are trying to propose, which is that the impact on the Ghanaian should be...
So when you say take a haircut, you're saying that 1% they take...
That 2% they take, because they take one
yes.
for the center,
so
one for the
they should give you some.
Or they should cut down on that one.
So that it can accommodate your 1.
So that they can accommodate our either, I mean, assuming you are still at 1.75, if they take off, let's say, 0.25, the net effect is lower on the Ghanaian rather than a 3.75 that was initially going to have been the impact. So again, you see that is a matter on which even the finance minister has indicated on the floor that we are willing to do something about it. And for revenue measures like the e-levy, we will come to Parliament with a specific bill. That bill will tell us, is it 1.5? Is it 1%? What is the threshold?
So the policy document doesn't have to... So the policy document says 1.75.
It is
the bill can...
proposal of government. But government cannot impose e-levy even after the approval
without a law.
We have to come, because under Article 174, I think, we have to come with a specific revenue bill, the Electronic Transactions Levy Act or bill initially, and have it debated, adjusted. Okay, 1 point, this is the impact, this one is exempted. Take out, for example, school fees, medical bills, paying, all the issues that have been raised, so that then Parliament can pass that bill. So that can also be dealt with at that stage. I think the only point of departure is the method. That if you say that the policy document should be thrown out until these matters are dealt with, when these matters can be dealt with in the remaining 3 or 4 stages of the budget process, we have a difficulty
we'll come to that when we come back.
Agreeing with that. And then secondly, the constitutionality of the method that was being used also posed a problem. And that's where the deadlock is.
We'll come back. This is the point of view. Kojo has raised some interesting point. Mahama Ayariga will respond. So government appears open to some changes, but whether those changes will necessitate a fresh policy document or whether they will just make those amendments during the appropriation stage is the issue at hand. We'll be coming back right after this. Stay with us. Welcome back to the point of view. So far, we've understood a few things about what the minority wanted changed in the budget and the government's position on some of these changes. I wanted to take Mr. Ayariga's response on the things Kojo Oppong said. So based on what he said, it seems reasonable EJAPA is just a policy document. Tidal wave, during appropriation and estimates, you can get it dealt with. ACA as well, similar to EJAPA, no issue there. Benchmark valuation, neither here nor there. I think the main issue is e-levy. Government is prepared to either ask the telcos to reduce how much they get to accommodate the 1.75, or they are prepared to come down. So why all the fuss from the minority?
There's been no clear communication accepting that government will reduce e-levy or scrap e-levy, not impose the taxation. Government hasn't come out with a clear communication. What you say on radio, what you say on television, what communicators say doesn't constitute an official pronouncement on government policy. And so we were expecting that when the minister was given the opportunity to round up the debate yesterday, he would have been specific that, okay, this is what we're doing about e-levy. But he just said that they will see what they can do about e-levy. In effect, that was what we got. Of course, he was definite about the ACA transaction and all those other issues, which are really, in our opinion, not major issues.
Okay.
The real issue is e-levy.
That's number one.
That is the priority. That is the number one issue so far as we are concerned. There's also the issue of the increase in fees and charges that people are not paying
15%.
15%
across all government
agencies. And we're talking about over 29,000 different fees and charges.
Are you serious?
Yes, over 29,000 different fees and charges.
Do we pay 20? Really?
There are different fees and charges totaling over 29,000, all of them captured in the fees and charges instrument. So if we approve this policy and then the fees and charges legislation is being, amended so that it will read, 15% across board, every university student will pay fees increment by 15%.
No.
Oh yes. Every charge for all the public universities will increase by 15%. Every charge for anybody transacting, let's say, at Lands Commission, which is captured in the fees and charges instrument, will increase by 15%. And he is proposing that in future, instead of coming back to Parliament to get approval for increments in the charges, he would rather be going to the Statistical Service Department to find out where inflation stands and use inflation as a benchmark for an automatic upward adjustment.
Again,
this is in the budget?
Yeah, it's in the budget.
Again, that's not.
I'll let you respond to that. I'll let you respond.
Yes, that's what we read in the budget.
So this is in addition. So this is actually another issue you wanted dealt with.
This is a major issue.
Okay, I didn't hear that initially.
This is a major issue. So it is not a simple matter. The taxes are the major issue in this budget. Now, as to the question of the motion, see, I don't want to get into those legalese, but strictly speaking, I listened to Chairman Sabonsu, the majority leader, and it was clear that he was coming under Order 51 and that he was moving for a motion for rescission. Why was he coming under Order 51? You see, to move a motion, you need to give notice. Several days notice usually, 48 hours. So you're
talking about what he did yesterday?
Yes, what he did yesterday. Then, in order to avoid giving the notice, he opted to come under 51. If an urgent public matter, you can just ask for Mr. Speaker's permission.
One of the four he described.
Yes.
Motion without notice.
Exactly. So he came under Order 51, and I heard him. It was a motion for rescission. And the Speaker, accepted it, and he put the question, and then they voted, and then they set it aside.
Really?
There
was no question.
In any case, if there was no question, then the Speaker has no authority to just come to the chamber and take judicial notice of what happened yesterday, when another parliament sat down and then voted. Even if the voting was irregular, you as Speaker cannot come and take judicial notice of it.
So just clarify how you guys dealt with that yesterday.
So whichever way.
And by yesterday, we are talking about 30th November. So we are talking about what happened on Tuesday.
Yes.
He's right. Or say Chairman Sabonsu. And I said both leaders attempted to invoke Order 51. And the Speaker's action has not changed. Or say Chairman Sabonsu mentioned Order 51. Ordinarily, if this was a motion properly so-called, he will move it. Not only would it be seconded, it will be debated and a question will be put. 4 things will happen. After Chair Mensah mentioned 51, Afenyo Marking got up on his feet and reiterated a certain position on it. The motion or the attempt to get a motion debated was not debated. Mr. Speaker then said that, in fact, if you listen to Afenyo's comments on the floor, he said he was inviting Mr. Speaker to make a determination on the matter.
Okay, Anas, please get that clip for me from yesterday to just help us to clarify.
And then Mr. Speaker said if he is going to make a determination on the matter, for that determination to be valid, he must be satisfied that Parliament has reached the quorum to take a decision for decision making. And that is when he counted 138 and then proceeded to make a pronouncement on it. Now, if it is a motion is not in the hands of the Speaker to take a determination on. A motion is in the hands of the members of Parliament. So the motion is moved, is seconded, is debated, and a question is put. But this is not the first time this sort of issue has been dealt with this way. And I think we've provided the precedent. When we were passing the Bank of Ghana Act, when the 6th Parliament was passing the Bank of Ghana Act, Speaker Doa Jaho put a question when there were 133 members in the House. His deputy, when he assumed the chair, was advised that this act by the Speaker is unconstitutional. And he reckoned the numbers and said, no, it is unconstitutional, void and of no effect, and vacated it. They didn't have to go through a motion, they didn't have to debate it, they didn't have to vote on it. It's exactly what Mr. Speaker did yesterday. Today, when our colleagues came, they also attempted to invoke 51. And Mr. Speaker said, you haven't served any notice, I haven't accepted this motion, but go ahead, I want to hear you. He had the various pieces of advice.
But that was when he got up and said, this man got up and said yesterday you didn't ask for anything like this. So why is he changing?
Absolutely. But you see, yesterday that motion was not accepted anyway. And I like what he said, that he did not make it clear and they were operating on an assumption. So as far as we are concerned, no motion was before the House today to be debated and voted on. But even be that as it may, I think that the substantive issue is whether or not the minister has been clear in his communication on the issues that are to be dealt with. I agree with him if he says that we have not been very clear officially. And what people say on TV and on radio does not amount to an official government position. He's right, 100% right. But why have we not been able to articulate this position? It's because when the finance minister who brought his motion to Parliament came to Parliament on the night of Thursday, I think, Friday.
26th November.
Yeah, Friday. In an attempt to arrest the motion and engage on the issues that had been raised. The very persons who had raised the issues, who wanted those issues addressed, said, we don't want to engage with you. We want to vote it down. How was he then going to engage and address the issues that you have raised? So, for example, take Keta. Is it 1 million or 20 million or 30 million that he has to accommodate in the budget? And how does he do that if you don't give him an opportunity to engage? So, part of the reason for which we have not been able to address in substance what my brother and his colleagues are looking for is because they are not giving us the opportunity so to do. And that is why we argue that while we cannot allow the unconstitutionality to stand, we are committed to engage and to deal with the issues. Let us engage and deal with the issues and address them in substance. Because in substance, what our people are looking forward to is that we as political leaders address the issues.
So why didn't you let Ken Ofori-Atta speak on that day?
You see, that's not true. Ken Ofori-Atta had a meeting with the leadership and the Speaker, and they discussed the issues. And Ken Ofori-Atta then requested, because I think our leadership said, look, we've come here, we haven't served our followers with any information regarding these discussions. And then the minister requested for a meeting with the leadership, an extended leadership. So when they came and then informed us that the minister wanted to meet us, our colleagues said, no, we'll meet the minister. Why? Because there was rumor going around that the minister has a way of compromising us. So at this critical stage, if we leave the chamber and go and meet with the minister, whatever we agree on, we can't defend it without it being said that we have been compromised by the minister. So whatever he has, he should come and say it on the floor of the House.
Okay.
To the hearing of everybody.
Without prior discussion with you?
Without prior discussion, he should come and tell us what he has on offer.
Sounds
if he
reasonable.
comes and offers something, and then we are told that let's adjourn and go and discuss what he has offered, then we can now adjourn, because everybody in Ghana would have heard that he's offered something substantive. So why don't you go out and go and then have a discussion of what he has offered? If you don't agree with it, go and have a discussion. So when the minister came, instead of so we then insisted that at least he should hear us what our issues are before he will make the offer. That was why we insisted that Haruna must argue, so that he will hear our side before he makes an offer. So Speaker said, okay, go ahead, Haruna, conclude the debate. And then when Haruna finished, the plan was even that the minister should speak. But then Che said, he too has to, respond. So he responded. They was, okay, now, Minister, tell us what you have. What's your position? And he said, we should go and engage. Wait, what? Go and engage? That's the offer, the request we made, and we rejected. We said you should come and state the offer before everybody so that we can engage based on the offer. Still, he hasn't. Even after the discussions yesterday until 3 p.m., he knew that the key issue was e-levy. And yet, when he had the opportunity to round up or comment after the majority had purportedly set aside our decision, again, he didn't say anything substantive about the e-levy, except to say that he will see what he can do about it. So clearly, the man doesn't want to commit himself on the issue of e-levy. And to the extent that he doesn't commit himself on the issue of e-level, we will not engage. I'm being very frank with you. We will not engage. Whatever it is, he knows our position.
So
he knows that our position, number one, is that...
Which is why on Friday... But why did you ask that he leave the chamber?
No, they didn't. It was Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, who
the
asked
Speaker,
that? Okay.
Yes, the Speaker. No.
And there was actually nothing wrong with
There's nothing wrong with that, because you are coming to vote.
Yes.
So you want the fraud to be clear.
Because even yesterday,
Joe Wise
did the same thing.
But the method, you see, again, the method. If you tell the Minister of Finance, whose budget he has brought to the floor, that if he doesn't leave, you let the marshals come for him, it really irked our backbenchers and our middle benches. And the reason, I clearly heard one person shout from the back that, so if the Vice President, who is allowed to come to this chamber and participate in debates, is here, and if this President is allowed to stand, are we going to have a day where Mr. Speaker tells the Vice President that he's going to let the marshals come for him? So the methods are the problem here. Bernard, it's not the substantive issues. For example, he says and this is my rendition of it, not what he says, they are being held hostage by their supporters. That they are being compromised, or that they will be compromised. And because of that, they don't want to exercise leadership. And so what they are doing is that, no, we'll meet with you. Come onto the floor and make your initial pitch on how you want us to negotiate. Nobody does that. And let me explain to you why. Today, as we are sitting here, if you watch the global capital market and you look at where Ghana's bonds are, if you check the way investors are reacting to the back and forth on the Ghanaian economy, it is because everything we say in public on the Ghanaian economy has a way of affecting the market.
Affects it, yeah.
For example, this e-levy has been programmed to bring us about $1 billion, about 6.7 or so billion cedis. It's $1 billion. It's equivalent to what, if you don't go for this e-levy, you end up going to an IMF fund program to plug your books. We have found a revenue measure which we believe will do the trick for us. Now, if you come and stand on the floor and begin litigating, okay, I'll move it to this, I'll move it to that, you begin to send signals onto the global capital markets of uncertainty. Even present investors in your bonds will begin to ask themselves whether your fiscal measures are credible, whether they should continue staying in your bonds or begin to withdraw, which will have an effect on
Kojo, why didn't
spreads,
you engage them before coming out with the percentage? Because I'm told that there was that possibility that sometimes when you have a contentious issue, in fact, when I spoke to the telecom chamber, they said there was deliberation but not engagement. You see, the wedding,
what does that mean?
The wedding of the Kenofriata's statement was that after considerable deliberation, we have decided to impose 1.75. Deliberation means we've thought about it and we've agonized over it. He didn't say extensive consultation.
Whether extensive or not is another matter. But I can say on authority that the relevant persons who needed to be engaged on this matter were. In fact, a whole study was done, which got a lot of data from the operators themselves, which data is what even gave us the knowledge of 100 Ghana cedis amounting to about 40%. The argument of the Vice President at the cabinet meeting about excluding the poor, which then translated into us excluding the poor. Even a discount, an attrition of how many people will stop using Momo if you impose this levy. All of that was done.
But you see, what is happening is that this is only the policy proposal of government. And there's nothing wrong with government saying that this is my policy proposal. There's nothing wrong with the telecom chamber, some of the fintechs, even our colleagues in the opposition saying that we disagree with this rate. And so we want it adjusted. There's nothing wrong with that. The path forward is what now becomes relevant. And we are saying that you don't answer that by saying, I've thrown out the policy document. You answer that by saying, let us sit down and engage. Let us look at the e-levy bill and see how to make these adjustments. Even yesterday, the finance minister repeated it on the floor, that we are even further consulting the telcos to see how they can take a haircut for us to accommodate the concerns. He didn't say that in addition to some of the earlier conversations we have had with them. So we don't agree on the substance. The method is what matters. And if we're going to be at a point where we say because of our supporters, we cannot go on the kind of methods we should use, we will have a difficult.
We'll take a break and come back and deal with that. So is it that the minority is failing to show leadership, or is it the government on an ego trip, not wanting to eat humble pie, to essentially accept that there are things that have to change? We'll be back with that and your messages. Stay with us. Welcome back to The Points of View. Tonight we're talking to two members of parliament and one who's a minister of information, Kojo Nkrumah MP for Ofuasi and Rebi. He's also the information minister, so he's wearing two hats. MP, he can't even run away from parliament. These days, if you move from parliament 5 minutes, you lose a vote.
They can even vote on your name.
So you work from parliament now.
Yes.
And then Mahama Ayariga, former information minister, MP for Boku Central. I think Kojo Nkrumah is an interesting point that it appears the minority leadership is conflicted. Based on your knowledge about parliament, and to be fair, when I interviewed your colleague, Bogatanga Central, I forget his name, Adungu, he actually tried to explain to the public that the fact that we oppose certain aspects of the budget doesn't mean that we will not approve it, because there are certain components that he basically said the budget is a composite document. So it's very difficult to say that because I disagree with ABCD, I throw out the full budget. This was last week, Monday. So it seems as if when you decide to do what is done in parliament, you may reasonably approve the budget, but your supporters have been sort of whipped up to think that this is your chance to show that you are powerful, so you have to oppose the government, which is what you seem to be doing.
No, that's not true. You see, this budget is based on some key policy measures. And those policy measures are geared towards raising revenue.
Okay.
And it appears that this government is not willing to budge in relation to those policy measures.
Okay.
So if you were monitoring our debate in Parliament, we kept saying that if it is this, we will not vote for it. Every speaker during the debate on the budget policy document said, look, if you keep e-levy, we will not vote for this budget. And there was no indication from the government until then, until the day we were concluding. And they didn't think that we're serious about it. They thought that, as usual, we will debate it, then people will come and talk to us about how to keep this country together and all those things, and then...
You have your say, you have their way.
Exactly.
Okay.
It was the day we were concluding the debate and we will vote that it then appeared to them that all that we have been saying were indeed very serious about it, and that we will in fact vote against the policy document. It was only that morning that they sought engagement. It was only that morning they sought engagement. So, yes, there are so many things. We can't even say we're against paying salaries. We can't say we're against, building hospitals. We can't say we're against constructing roads. All those are in the budget. But then the key issue in the budget is the revenue measures that government sought to impose. The 15% across-board increment in all fees and charges, and then also the 1.75%.
How serious are you when
those are the key major issues?
How serious are you with the point Haruna made that from now everything will be voted on? He basically was saying that because of what they did yesterday, there was not going to be consensus. That's the impression I got from your press conference yesterday.
Yes, because
you are serious about that.
Yeah, we are. Because you see, the practice in the House has been that when you start with a quorum, you go with a quorum until somebody raises the question of quorum. So on Friday, they came in. We started with about 274 members of parliament with the speaker. At least that is what the votes and proceedings showed, that there were 274 members of parliament in the house. Now, at the point of putting the specific question on the budget policy, there was no count as to how many people were in the chamber. And the practice of the house is that if anybody has an issue with quorum, you raise it specifically. Then the speaker will count to be sure that
so this is Friday.
Is a quorum. This is Friday.
And since they were not there, nobody raised.
And since they could not be there to raise it,
it wasn't raised.
It wasn't raised.
So quorum was assumed to be.
Because we're indeed, our side. We don't know if there were other people in the chamber, but our side, we were 137. There could be other people in the chamber at that time, but we were looking at our members. We made sure that the 137 were there. Now, if they say that the quorum is 138, they needed to keep one person in the chamber to raise the question of quorum. But if that person stayed in the chamber to raise the question of quorum, he will be counted among the 137 to now properly constitute the quorum, assuming that 137 is the quorum. So that has been the practice. Now, if you come and then you dispute that and say 137 cannot constitute a quorum for decision making, and therefore it has to be 138, it means that henceforth, if there's no 138 members in the House, the following day will come and set aside everything that happened. So motu, without somebody even moving a motion, because that's why he's alleging. He's alleging that the speaker, on his own just came and recognized that yesterday there was no quorum and therefore set it aside, which is not normal.
No, that's a fact.
Not normal.
I want to come to you on government.
It's not normal.
Because I know you want to, but I need you to speak as government now, because even before you became information minister, you were a key person in the finance communication of government.
Yeah.
So, and today you were supposed to host the Minister of Finance at your
Yes.
Why didn't you have him on? What happened?
Because Parliament was going through this drama, and like you mentioned earlier, you can't leave the chamber, and so
so you're a prisoner in the chamber.
And so we had to take a second decision. That let's suspend that press briefing. Let's finish.
Oh, you have to do the press briefing in Parliament now.
Well, perhaps, but two quick things.
Okay.
You see, in law, we have something we call putting an inquiry. Putting an inquiry means you are fixed with constructive knowledge. He's right. Nobody raised the quorum, but to the extent that just before then they had counted and had 1370 and actually recorded it in text. You notice that the day after there was an attempt to say that it was 138 and there was somebody in the chamber.
So there were two people.
We don't even want to go there. So they were fixed with constructive knowledge. That argument cannot stand the test of time. Now, again, if anybody makes an argument that the mere approval of the economic policy means that fees and charges will go up 15%, it cannot be true.
Okay.
Because the fees and the policy proposal that was in the economic policy document said that we are going to come to this house with the Fees and Charges Levies Act. And we are going to include an amendment that says that instead of waiting for this 5 years, sometimes 10 years before fees and charges are adjusted, by which time inflation has eroded whatever fees and charges are being charged, we're going to include in the act that the finance minister can now benchmark to inflation. It doesn't mean that the finance minister will go to statistical service and use that to adjust. He can't do that. It will even be absurd to attempt to do that. You will notice that in the end, we'll come with a specific act. And that's why I've said that for
this is the same thing.
No, for revenue measures, we will come to the House with a specific act on it,
which they will have vote upon.
Which will have an opportunity to deal with.
That implements the policy that has been approved.
No.
But you can still stop the bill.
And
even if the policy says it, you can still say the percentage is too high.
No. The position is this. People made that argument that, why don't you approve the policy, and then when it gets to the specific bill, then you will vote against. So no. There are two options. I can tell you in the first place that I'm not interested in the policy. I don't want to play games. Let me approve the policy, but when we get to the votes on the specific.
Fair enough.
So we took a position that we won't even approve the policy, so that we now get to the.
So you wanted a new budget.
A new budget that takes out those issues. And
let me read a few comments for both of you. Bernard, the finance minister has agreed that he has taken into consideration the concerns expressed by the minority, and he has taken care of these in the budget. It means that what was approved by the two sides separately does not include these. So what stops him and the majority from accepting same and including it in a revised estimate. This is Tony from Lashibi. Good evening, Bernard. These politicians are toying with our emotions and taking us for fools. Be it party in power or opposition, there are no goodwill towards the citizens. Emmanuel from Tardi. Bernard, on this occasion, Joe Wise didn't live up to his name. The arrogance of the so-called slim majority will not help the cause of the citizens. From Don Misiga. Bernard, don't believe Kojo, Oppong, Nkrumah and the MPP. They are very manipulative. Don't listen to anybody. This is not democracy. Martin Kweku said them. How long would it take the finance minister to back space those items in the budget that the minority listed, correct them for the budget to be approved? I think the constitutional autocracy adopted by the government will not help this country. Peter from Temak. Interesting times we are in. If Kojo believes that the reviews could be done at other stages, why can't they accept the changes now? This shows the government is not going to make the changes. And then, for me, this e-levy stuff that a certain political grouping keeps rejoicing about and blowing trumpet just because it was passed will soon hit us in the face like a rotten egg. The levy won't affect the minority only. And if I had my way, I would have advised the minority to let go so we suffer the consequences together. Sefiamo. We'll leave it here. Will Finance Minister speak on Thursday?
Tomorrow, right?
Yes.
Yes, we are rescheduling our press briefing tomorrow, hopefully around 4 p.m.
Hopefully Parliament will be over.
But do you know what will happen in Parliament tomorrow?
But that's why I said hopefully.
You have other things up your sleeve. So this time you just, wow.
They have some more tricks up their sleeve. No, but hopefully we're looking at 4 p.m.
Was Ajua in Parliament?
She was in Parliament. I spoke to her myself. When she came in, I was one of those who welcomed her. She was there today.
So
as well.
It was the Ajua Safo we know.
It was. I think this argument is very ridiculous.
But is this affecting ministers? Because every minister who is an MP has to be in Parliament.
Yes, every minister has to be in Parliament literally all the time. But you see, for me, it is a phase in which we are. We really need to get to the substance of the issue. The 5 issues that they have raised are the issues we have to deal with.
Okay.
When we have dealt with those issues, we should also agree on a certain method for reaching that point where we accommodate these issues. Because our citizens are watching us and expect. Look at some of the texts that you read. People are losing confidence in our ability to provide leadership. And I think that's what we need to rise up to in these times.
Thank you very much. Information Minister Kojo Oppong Nkrumah, also MP for Ayariga in the Eastern Region. Honorable Mahama Ayariga, MP for Boku Central, former Information Minister. Thank you also for being here. That's all we have time for tonight. The Business Dashboard is next. My name is Bernard Avle. Stay with CCTV. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.